Hello from Incredible Crime Story Channel, as we dive into another difficult-to-solve murder mystery. Investigators worked hard to solve this case, where Michael Blagg reports the disappearance of his wife and child. In 2001, 38-year-old Michael Blagg, an engineer by education, with 10 years of service in the Navy behind him, lives in Grand Junction, Colorado. Grand Junction is a city of about 60,000 inhabitants, located roughly 200 miles southwest of Denver. The former Navy captain now works for Amatec Dixon, a company also based in Grand Junction, and engaged in industrial and service activities. Mike lives in a comfortable two-story house with his wife, 34-year-old Jennifer, and their 6-year-old daughter, Abby. It started out as a normal day. It was Tuesday, November 13th, at 4:20 p.m., that Michael Blagg calls the emergency number 911 with a trembling voice. He tells them that he just returned home from work, and there is blood on the bed and various items scattered on the floor. His wife and daughter are not in the house, and soon the police arrive at the indicated address, because the officers do not rule out that the perpetrator or perpetrators are still inside the Blagg's house. They search all rooms with guns ready to fire, however the house is empty. Before the specialized forensics team arrives on the scene, the police conduct preliminary examinations. What immediately catches the eye is the blood on the bed in the main bedroom, and on the ground floor. In addition to this, an open empty jewelry box lies on the floor. Additionally, some small items were scattered around it. Soon a widespread operation is launched to find Mike's wife and daughter. The police call in reinforcements and search the area, including nearby forests, and using sonar the nearby Colorado River. They check if Jennifer and Abby might be in any hospitals, but strike out on that. They also talk to neighbors with little information provided. It seems that no one noticed anything unusual. Michael indicated that as usual he drove to work at 6 a.m., and his wife and daughter were still asleep. He called home during the day as he usually does, but no one answered, so Mike left messages on the answering machine. He returned from work at 4 p.m. and then called the emergency number 911 when discovering the blood and that his wife and daughter were nowhere to be found. The police tentatively assumed that a robbery combined with abduction took place. Those assigned to the case wondered if Michael's family had any enemies. This seems unlikely, as initial questioning by the detectives doesn't reveal any conflicts. On the contrary, everything indicates that Mike and Jennifer were very well liked. Everyone also emphasizes that they were religious, and Jennifer was known for her dedication to church activities. Time passes and there is no trace of the missing persons. Meanwhile, at the crime scene, evidence is being collected. Investigators wonder about the lack of signs of struggle in the bedroom, where Jennifer presumably was attacked. The presence of a large amount of blood indicates that she suffered serious injuries, but the police cannot determine the nature of the injuries or the source of the weapon. It also seems strange that there are no traces of blood anywhere else in the house. There is none in the garage either, but in Jennifer's car parked there, the police find a few small stains that appear to be blood. This raises the fundamental question: if the bodies were transported in this car, how do you explain the aforementioned lack of blood traces throughout the house? It will take several days before it can be conclusively determined to whom all these traces belong, but in the meantime, one thing is certain: the crime scene looks staged. As a result, very quickly, approximately 48 hours after Jennifer's disappearance was reported, investigators begin to doubt whether the Blagg marriage was indeed so perfect. Meanwhile, Michael and his mother-in-law appeal in the media to the perpetrators to release Jennifer and Abby, and the close community in the church tries to support Mike as much as possible. There is no specific lead in this case, yet the police begin searching databases for kidnappers and other offenders, and also expand their search efforts in the area. Another day passes and Michael Blagg is summoned for questioning again. He has to answer various questions: what his wife was like, what their marriage was like. He is asked again if there have been any recent significant incidents, such as strange calls, harassment, or if there were any problems with people at work or in the church community they belong to. Michael speaks highly of his wife and their marriage, but when it comes to concerning events, he emphasizes that he hasn't noticed anything like that. During this conversation, Michael has to recount in detail the events of the day Jennifer and Abby disappeared. The interrogators also ask him if he thinks it's possible that there was another man in Jennifer's life. Michael claims there wasn't, but he adds that he cannot completely rule it out. Investigators search through Jennifer's belongings in one of her religious-themed books. They unexpectedly find a clue. It's a handwritten note made by Jennifer in the margin information that instead of going to church, she spent the morning with Stanley praying with him for guidance in her life. The note also has a date, and it turns out it was made the day before Jennifer and her daughter disappeared. The police question all possible individuals about a man named Stanley. Both Blagg's family and friends, as well as members of the church community, but they do not find any man by that name. Meanwhile, the lab results come in. It turns out that the blood found in the house and its traces in the car belonged exclusively to Jennifer, and the fingerprints taken belonged to family members. The lab also gives an opinion on the extent of injuries, which can be determined based on the amount of blood lost by the person. Jennifer is most likely deceased, and the investigators also decide to check if Michael might have been involved in an affair. They search through his work computer, but they find nothing indicating that. They do come across something else: an unsent email Michael wrote to Jennifer on the day of her disappearance precisely at 3:58 p.m. It contained, among other things, the following words: "Jennifer, I'm sorry we ruined this day. I don't know what went wrong. I wish we could spend some time today discussing our problems." They now have clear evidence that the Blaggs' marriage was by no means problem-free. These pieces of information prompt the investigators to once again analyze Michael's account of the events on the day his wife and daughter disappeared. They analyze the recording of the conversation Michael had with the emergency dispatcher on February 13th. They are struck by a fact that somehow escaped their attention earlier, namely, from the conversation, it appears that the man did not even go upstairs to the children's room after finding blood traces in the bedroom, nor did he walk around the property. It's striking to investigators that he was only prompted to go to Abby's room by the dispatcher questions about the child. The police also replay the recordings left by Mike on the answering machine. In the recording from 3 p.m., the caller's voice already shows very strong concern about the fact that no one is answering. The investigators conclude that it's strange that the worried family man didn't just decide to drive home, having only about a 6-minute drive to work. The investigators search the Blaggs' home computer and find hundreds of hidden images. The nature of these images suggests the dominant sexual orientation of the person who collected them. The police also uncover the identity of the mysterious Stanley, as he turns out to be a certain Charles Stanley, a pastor appearing on television in religious programs. This Stanley provides all kinds of advice to members of the Baptist Christian community to which the Blaggs belong. The pieces of the puzzle fall into place when it turns out that in the Sunday program on February 11th, Charles Stanley strongly condemned adult content. Investigators speculate that the argument between the spouses, which took place before Michael's wife and daughter disappeared, was about this very topic. When the detectives bring up adult content found on the home computer, Michael explains that his intention was merely to refresh his marriage. The police realize they have no concrete evidence against him, and they don't even have bodies, so Michael remains only under observation. Now, 3 months after his family's disappearance, he is unofficially a suspect in the case. Soon the observation yields unexpected results, as detectives see one day that Mike is stealing office furniture from the company where he works. The furniture is packed into boxes, and on the recording, he is seen placing them in the trunk of his car before driving away. This is another element that makes one think what hides behind the psyche of a man who, on the outside, is an exemplary member of the church community, but is capable of stealing furniture from his own company. During this time, he is repeatedly interrogated. The police try to break him and get him to confess, but Michael, probably due to his military background, seems very resistant to interrogation techniques. During one of them, after 8 hours of questioning, a tired and tearful Mike suddenly asks, "What's the difference between first and second-degree murder?" Taking advantage of this moment of weakness, the interrogators ask, "Where are Jennifer and Abby?" "I've got some great hopes that we're going to find something out, like you said somebody knows something. You know that you're the first person who's a suspect, and that you're probably still an active suspect. I feel like that has to be the case because I've been told that in excess of 90% of the time, it's a family member or someone close to the family that would do this sort of thing. Did you have anything to do with their disappearance?" "No, I had nothing to do with their disappearance, and it's strange to me to think that anybody could do anything like what apparently happened here." He talks about them constantly, and in spite of the uncertainty, it's always in the present tense. If you've seen either one of these two beautiful people, if you would please get in touch with the Mesa County Sheriff's Department. The pictures show a family of 3 smiling people together. Pink was her favorite color, according to one of the policemen involved. This was the only moment of honesty from Michael throughout the investigation. Unfortunately, it did not lead to him providing any new testimony. Michael is released home after a total of 10 hours of interrogation. The next day, a group of police officers arrives at Michael's apartment to discuss the stolen furniture, and the suspect doesn't open the door. The police call the building manager and enter the apartment. They find Mike lying in the bathtub in water, full of blood with cuts on his wrist. He is immediately transported to the hospital. It quickly turns out that his injuries are not dangerous, and the police conclude that it was not an act of desperation, but merely a demonstration by Michael to divert attention from what might seem suspicious and probably to evoke sympathy. For months have passed since Jennifer and Abby disappeared, and the investigators still have no leads. They realize that only finding the body or bodies would give them a chance to prosecute Michael. In April, a large-scale search operation is organized while about 200 volunteers comb through an area covering thousands of square miles for 10 days. Unfortunately, they do not find any trace of the missing persons. When even these efforts yield no results, an incredibly frustrating time follows for those leading the investigation. Despite this frustration, they do not give up assuming that the perpetrator made or will make some mistake, and that they simply need to patiently wait and continue their operational work. Soon it turns out that the investigators had intuition, and a breakthrough in the case comes quite unexpectedly. Mike's coworkers recall that on the day his wife and daughter disappeared, he was seen taking out the trash during work, which was completely out of character for him. With this new information, the investigators immediately become suspicious that it was somehow connected to Jennifer and Abby's disappearance. It's possible that Michael transported the bodies in his car to the company premises, threw them into the dumpster, and then checked throughout the day to see if they had been taken to the landfill along with the garbage. A new energy enters into the investigation, and now they need to search for the bodies at the local Mesa County landfill. It won't be easy. There are millions of pounds of garbage there. However, finally, there is a lead in the case. Confirmation of their suspicions, the investigators contact the landfill manager. He has doubts about the feasibility of the plan, but seeing the enthusiasm and determination of the investigators, he is convinced. Thanks to the latest technology, and using waste storage logs, the search area is narrowed down to a space of 200 x 300 feet, 30 m deep. Still, it's immensely large, 1,800,000 square feet of garbage. The work begins on May 13th, and an excavator digs vertically into the pile of garbage and unearths a portion of trash, which is then searched through by the participants. It's not safe work as the ground is unstable and there are toxic materials around. Days pass and the searchers find nothing. Doubts start to arise about whether this endeavor makes any sense. As 2 weeks pass, skepticism starts to take over, but on the 16th day, a hanging human leg suddenly appears in the scooped-up trash. The investigator who was there later recounted that he couldn't describe the emotions that arose among those participating in the search at that moment. He only remembers that everyone ran around chaotically in different directions, as if trying to cope with their emotions. The investigators immediately called the coroner as the body is in a state of decomposition, but there is no doubt that it belongs to a woman. Later that same day, the remains are taken to the forensic medicine department. Identification is made by comparing the dental records of the deceased woman with Jennifer's dental records. The suspicions are confirmed the remains belong to Mike's wife. A comprehensive autopsy is ordered which shows that the cause of death was a gunshot to the head. Jennifer was shot during the night wearing pajamas, and a dental brace still remains in her mouth. A warrant is issued for Michael's arrest, and he is arrested at his mother's house. The search for Abby continues at the landfill. Unfortunately, it yields no results, and on the 52nd day, after shifting over 4,600 tons of garbage to a depth of 19 feet, the search is halted. The trial begins 2 years after the disappearance was reported. According to the prosecution, Michael Blagg shot his wife in the face while she was still asleep. He wrapped her body in a nylon tarp and placed it in her minivan. He then disposed of the body in the dumpster at the building where he worked. The defense argues that there's no way to prove a connection between the bodies found at the landfill and Michael. After 5 weeks of trial, Michael Blagg is sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of his wife. Due to lack of evidence, he was never charged with Abby's death. According to the investigators, Abby's body remains somewhere deep in the Mesa County landfill. The fact that they never managed to find the girl is a kind of failure for those involved in the case. Prosecutors argued he killed Jennifer because of his need for control. Michael Blagg never admitted to the crimes he was accused of. The verdict forms are in proper form and order, and I will read those which bear the 4-person signature. As to count 1, we the jury find the defendant Michael Blagg guilty of first-degree murder. Count 2, we the jury find the defendant Michael Blagg guilty of theft. Victim Unit United Services Automobile Association. Count 3, we the jury find the defendant Michael Blagg guilty of theft, the victim being Amatech Dixon and AO Electronics. Michael Blagg received a life sentence for the first-degree murder charge. In 2014, that conviction was tossed after defense attorneys discovered that one of his jurors, Grand Junction resident Marilyn Charlesworth, admitted she was a victim of domestic violence, something she didn't disclose when she was selected to serve on that jury, and as a result, Mesa County prosecutors had to try the case over and did so in a Jefferson County courtroom because of a change in venue. That retrial was a difficult one for prosecutors, in part because it occurred 17 years after Jennifer Blagg was killed and the couple's daughter Abby went missing. Because his prior conviction was overturned due to juror misconduct, and it was highly publicized, we anticipated the primary issue on appeal would be a venue change. Mesa County District Attorney Dan Rubenstein said, in an effort to do everything we could to protect the conviction, I made the very difficult and unpopular decision to concede to the defense request for a venue change. He added, that meant that our trial team had to live out of suitcases for 2 months, while trying one of the most complex and high-profile cases this jurisdiction has ever seen. Blagg's court-appointed public defender tried to argue that the second conviction should be reversed because the trial court erred when it allowed evidence from an unlawful search of his home. The admitted expert testimony that improperly opined on his guilt excluded evidence of an alternative suspect and restricted his testimony and permitted improper cross-examination. A 3-judge panel of the court rejected all of those claims, saying there was extensive evidence of his guilt, even though Blagg and his attorneys say it all was circumstantial evidence. Evidence showed that Blagg had experienced personal, marital, and work problems before the murder. Anthony Navro wrote in the opinion, which was joined by Judges Jacqueline Brown and David Yoon. Expert testimony indicated that it was unlikely that an intruder unknown to Blagg's wife had broken into the home and killed her. Navro added the crime scene in the home appeared to be staged to look like a robbery gone wrong. The family van was likely used to transport his wife's body and then returned to the home. The court wrote that Blagg loaded up a dumpster at his workplace, which was out of the ordinary, and owned a gun similar to one used to kill his wife. After an extensive search around the region, her body was discovered in the landfill wrapped in a tent similar to one owned by Blagg, and was surrounded by rubbish from Blagg's office during the first trial. Blagg was convicted on 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of abuse of a corpse, and 1 count of theft over $115,000, and 1 count of theft over $100. Additionally, he was convicted on a crime of violence in 2014. All of those convictions were reversed, but a Jefferson County jury reconvicted him of the same charges, and he was again sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole and concurrent sentences on the other accounts, which ranged from 3 months to 3 years. Blagg is serving his sentence at the Colorado Territorial Correctional Facility in Cannon City. Marilyn Charlesworth, former juror, was convicted in 2018 of criminal contempt, and she was ordered to serve 10 days in the Mesa County Jail and pay a fine of $10,000. Thanks for watching this sad and mysterious case. Like, comment, or subscribe as you like, and until the next one.